Paul works and preaches in Corinth. There he found a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had issued an edict for all Jews to leave Rome. So Paul paid them a visit, and as they all had the same trade, they proceeded to work together. Every Sabbath it was Paul's habit to preach in the synagogue and to persuade both Jews and Greeks. By the time Silas and Timothy arrived from Macedonia, Paul was wholly absorbed in preaching the message and was enthusiastically assuring the Jews that Jesus is the Christ. They opposed and abused him. He shook out his clothes in protest and said to them, "Your blood be upon your own heads. I am not to blame for it myself. Hereafter I am going to the Gentiles." Corinth had a long history dating from the Neolithic period, 5000 BC. However, the actual city Paul walked into was only about 100 years old. In 146 BC, the Roman army destroyed the ancient city. They massacred the inhabitants or sold them as slaves. The city lay abandoned until 44 BC. Julius Caesar recognized its economic potential and developed it as the capital of the Roman province of Achaia. He repopulated the barren landscape with people from several different cultures. Drawing from different places around the empire, Caesar relocated Romans, Greeks, and Jews. Many were freed slaves or retired military officers. Paul's Corinth was a very busy trading city, which led to its cosmopolitan character. It was known as Wealthy Corinth. The reason for its wealth can be found in its unique location. Geographically, Corinth was located on the narrow isthmus only 4 miles wide. The isthmus connected the Peloponnesus to mainland Greece. Corinth maintained harbors on both sides of the isthmus. Cenchreae Harbor was on the Saronic Gulf in the east, and the Lachaio Harbor was on the Corinthian Gulf in the west. The two harbors were linked by a paved trackway called the Deoclos, constructed in the 7th century BC. Ships and cargo were hauled by means of a wooden track crossing the isthmus. Taking this shortcut, ships avoided the treacherous sea road around the Peloponnesus. This overland passage also saved time. One harbor provided straight access to Asia and the other to Italy. Corinth provided an easy exchange of merchandise between Asia and Rome. The location was also a natural resting place for travelers. When Emperor Claudius expelled Jews from Rome, a large number fled by ship. Corinth was their first stop. Many stayed and took up residence in Corinth. Priscilla and Aquila were among those exiles. Duties from the import/export trade and charges for moving ships across the isthmus added to Corinth's prosperity. Besides trade, prostitution provided another major source of revenue. The cult of Aphrodite lured sailors who enjoyed the favors of the many temple prostitutes. Another source of revenue was hosting the Pan, Hellenic Isthmian Games in honor of Poseidon. The games attracted athletes and merchants from distant provinces. Every 2 years, spectators and participants in the Pan-Hellenic Isthmian Games flooded into the region. During the games, tents were highly sought after. That made Corinth an excellent place for tent makers like Paul and Aquila. At the time of Paul's arrival in AD 52, Corinth had the largest population in Greece. The central area of the city was about 20 acres in size. This space was taken up with the agora and temples dedicated to a multitude of gods. Corinth boasted a forum with shops, fountains, and other public buildings larger than Rome's. The exact number of citizens is hard to pin down. A range from 50,000 to 80,000 fits within a range most scholars brave enough to number would find acceptable. The majority of these citizens were Greek. Still, Roman culture was a major influence. The cultural composition of Corinth was very different from the one found in Athens. In addition to the cultural diversity of citizens, there was a constant exchange of visitors and merchants. It is perhaps more accurate to picture 1st century Corinth as a place of hybrid identities. Greek culture, language, and religion were all reshaped in a variety of ways by Roman colonization. Roman dominance continued until the end of the 4th century AD.